This is Cassandra, aka the Chef in Pearls, and I am honored and privileged to have Dr. Leni Sorensen here with us.
Hello.
And Leni is a food historian,
Yes.
chef, home
How
producer.
about a chef?
Well, there are
We
people.
can have that discussion.
Okay.
You know, that's part of the
There are
discussion.
people that believe that you are.
I'm a cook, that's for sure.
You got that on lock.
Yeah. You know, I am a cook.
You can feed some people.
Yeah, I'm a cook, all caps. Let's put it that way.
And you're a farmer as well.
And I'm a farmer, you know. But I guess for me, chef has always had that, and a restaurant is a singular and really kind of a beautiful machine in which a person who has talent cooking has conceived of recipes and menus that are perfectly coordinated and beautiful, and the recipes are precise so that the thing that I ate that was fabulous last Wednesday, when I go back next Thursday to take my friend, my beloved, to eat there, it's exactly like it was. And so I could say, oh yeah, isn't it really great? Okay, that's what a chef does. And that's a brilliant choreography of making sure that all of the flavors and the tastes continue and are uniform, and that all of the stuff is coming in, the provisions are coming in, so that it's never, well, we don't have any basil this time, we'll just make one out. No, you know what I mean? You can't do that. A cook, home cook, and a very good home cook, for sure. And in that larger setting, I can adapt, I can flow. We don't have any basil, what the hell? We'll do blah, blah, blah. That's not a restaurant.
But then all chefs aren't in restaurants, though.
Well, that is very true, too.
So.
And we've gotten it kind of there's a whole conversation we could have. But
Yeah,
for me, I think of that the ideal of what chefdom is to have that precision. And I just don't want to claim something I'm not, because I admire chefs where when I walk in that restaurant, I'm getting the thing that I had that, I've been talking about it for months and looking forward to it for months, and when I eat it, it really hits it. At my house, the spaghetti sauce tastes a little bit different every single time. I make you never know kind of what you're going to get. And that too is a lovely and exciting thing to have, but I just have always thought of it as kind of different. So I felt a little unsure. I've had times when I have acted as a chef, but I'm not in that other mode. I like cook, full stop, all caps.
It's funny because Nigella Lawson recently did an article in regards to home cooks, because she doesn't consider herself a chef either. And she owns her I'm a cook, and she wants more home cooks to own that. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, if you're damn good at what you do, you just damn good at what you do.
And especially if you do it every damn day.
Yeah, but that's how you get to be good.
That's right, yeah. And I've watched her a little bit, and I've always kind of enjoyed her because she's not picky or prissy about, sometimes about measurements. And a lot of that, of course, comes from experience.
Yeah.
I don't know if you were there when we did the how much salt is a tablespoon.
We did the teaspoon.
The teaspoon,
demo,
you measure it in the teaspoon, you put it in your hand, and by the time you've done that like 8 or 9 times, you really know what a teaspoon is. You throw it in. To a total novice, that looks pretty.
Like that fancy.
But it is that you actually have consciously, approached it, and that informality is kind of what I often really admire, and that's certainly kind of the style that
That's interesting.
We have the 5-second rule at our house because I have a very casual house, and people who live in the real world, have dogs and cats and children, and stuff gets dropped, and you just can't be too picky or precise or done in the way that in certain settings you have to be, because the customer can't go home and then get sick.
Right.
Whereas at your house,
Serve
you know
safe.
what I mean? You almost don't kind of care. Go to
Right.
bed, take an aspirin, I don't care.
So,
you can be mean to your children, you can't be mean to your customers.
No, you can't, because you want them to come back.
Right.
So I want to start off by saying that I would like to thank High Hog Farm.
High Hog, everybody.
Well, for allowing us to be able to do the interview here today,
Oh.
and I do appreciate you actually allowing me to interview, so that's great. We are currently at High Hog Farm, and if you guys follow me, you know I love spending time here a lot.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I do too.
And so I just want to thank High Hog Farms for providing us the space and the time, so I appreciate that. Leni was in town because she came to do a 3-day intensive workshop where women, well, it didn't have to be women,
It could just be anybody.
but you tend to have a lot more women come.
Yeah, because a lot of women are the primary food organizers in their household. That's just a standard pattern. I don't have any particularly rigorous, polemical or political position on that. That is just the way it is. I always love it when there are men who have taken on that task to be part of it. That's cool too. We got to be, I want to include more children and all that other stuff. But
Right.
I'm a pragmatist. You take who you get, and we had some lovely.
Right. Well, prior to the 3-day weekend, you had a book signing, which I was happy to host.
Yes,
I
indeed.
did. And
And Wild.
no, then we had the
That was at the other.
that was in Statham,
Okay.
and then we went and you did the pasta demo
Okay, and
at
that
the
was
Wild Center.
the Wild Center, right? I keep
And that was
wanting
great.
to call it a different thing.
Yeah, it's the Wild Center, and we had we had a group of men with one woman in the midst of it.
That's right. And as an interesting dynamic, the men were 3 married couples.
Four.
And-
They weren't four.
No, 3 married
three of them?
couples
Okay.
and a single.
And they were dating,
which
okay.
isn't it wonderful that we live in a time when that is the case, and I'm so delighted. But they were a wonderful group of people
really
who
were.
very interested in food, interested in laughter and being part of a group and expanding, knowing about the Wild Center. More than just coming to a class and then going away.
Right.
So those are all wonderful ways of
Well,
getting it all out there.
I want you to know one of the guys that reached out to me, and I was supposed to send you all of the love from the guys because they really loved you.
Well, we had a great time.
Yes, they enjoyed themselves. So, Leni did spend quite a bit of time here, and she's shared herself on so many different avenues, and so we were blessed to have her here. And now
I was supposed to go home on the train last night, but Amtrak had to cancel due to the storm.
Oh, so sad. She had to stay longer.
And I'm still having a really wonderful day. I haven't stopped talking yet. We've just been on a nonstop roar.
So I have to say this. The first time that I met Leni was at the Food for Thought conference.
Yeah.
And that was last year. And when you spoke, I was like, that's what I want to be when I grow up. Just like her, I want to be. I was like, that's
You
me.
mean crazy?
Well, if that's how we're going to describe it, then I'm good with that. I'm fine with that. But that was just, I literally saw you and was just like, that's me. That's going to be me.
We want to do, get old and cook food.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah.
Or cook food and get
Get
old
old,
in whatever
whatever
order,
comes
that you do. Writ broadly.
But you've been hearing you speak at the food conference, and then hearing you talk even during this trip. So the questions that I have now changes because,
So you know me.
So, but hearing you speak, I get a lot of wild child from you. Like you just live. Well, I don't know if we want to say wild child, but you went with the flow and you lived life as best the way that you saw that you could live it.
I just had a pretty out of the regular, or what seems to be the regular. Although everybody lives their own lives and has marvelous stuff of their own stuff. If you start talking to any individual, no matter how plain their lives might have been, but some part of it comes. I was a single child. My mother was divorced several times. I led a very if I use the word isolated, it unfortunately has a kind of a negative thing. But I was allowed to do a lot of what I did, unsupervised by kind of watching adults. I didn't have close cousins or close aunts or uncles or anybody that might show up to check out what the kid was doing. You know, my parents didn't get home from work until whenever they got home from work at 6-ish. And so I didn't have to, I didn't have to answer to anybody about what I was doing.
Right.
Now, I was a pretty well-behaved child in that I was in the things I was interested in. I was very interested. I started to cook very early because it was fun and I enjoyed it. I had responsibilities within the household and I did them by myself, and I usually sang out loud and got real crazy. I didn't have the competition of siblings, you know, telling me to shut up or elbowing me out to do this. There was no jockeying. I could do the things I did, just do them without, you know, having to worry about that.
Right.
So I could cook, I could sew, I could
I'm envious
do
that you can
any
sew.
of those. Well, my stepdad was an upholsterer,
Ah.
and he, I would quite often, especially when I was younger, I would go spend Saturdays with him because he worked on Saturday, and my mother needed Saturday to do whatever it was my mother was doing. I don't know what she was doing. I was a kid, you know, moms do whatever they do.
Right.
Right. And she wasn't very motherly, so let's just say that, get that clear. I would go to the shop. Now, he had a shop, it was a small business in South LA with lots of what I really loved, kind of old black guys all sitting around talking about cars and engines and, you know, old guy talk.
You
know
said
what I mean?
old guy talk.
You know how old guys talk, you know, about, you know, and tools and hardware stores. You know what I mean? They all talk about that kind of stuff. And I always really loved to overhear all that stuff. But Daddy let me use the machines. And so he had these great big Singer power machines that had a knee pressure foot. You didn't press with your foot.
I've
You
never
pressed
seen
with
one
your
of them.
knee. They're big power machines there. You know, the table of it is this big and the machine. Well, he just assumed once I learned how to, don't get your fingers in it, dog. There, that was the direction.
That was it.
Yeah, push this and don't get your
big
fingers
cord
in it.
there.
Fine.
Right.
And then he'd give me, he had all the scraps. And so I would just sew on the scraps, and I'd sit there, and the machines are, you know, both noisy and rhythmic, you know. You know, it was really cool. And you could sew as fast as you want, and it was really great.
Oh,
Okay.
see?
So then I learned at home, my godmother gave me a treadle sewing machine, which is an American home style machine that began to be sold in the late 19th century. And the treadle machines in a wooden case, you've probably many times seen them like at antique stores. Treadle machines, which has that thing.
Right,
below.
that the
Okay.
press.
I got that. Okay, that was fun. You know, and because it sews regular fabric, you know, with regular needles, and it's quiet. Tick, 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 tick. Okay, really cool. Which meant, it's a long story, but I'm going to tell it anyway. My stepdad, who was from Algiers, Louisiana, was a collector of records of blues and big band, and very early blues and big band people, Big Maceo, Jimmy Rushing, Muddy Waters later, Nellie Lutcher, Brunsey, Gatemoth Brown. I mean, all of the big. Okay, that's what he loved. He had a huge collection of 78s. That's the ones with the hole in the center, and you turn them over. Okay, and they run about a minute and a half or two. Okay, and we had this record player that was in a machine. It was in a box that had a little 10-inch television.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was very cool. And the stack on, you could stack the records, and you could stack like 8 at a time. Would be about the most, and then they would drop. Okay, because I showed that I could do it and never broke the records and took care of them. I was allowed to play any of the records that I wanted. So I would come home from school, and I would play music and dance when I felt like it, and sew when I felt like it, and cook when I felt like it. And they would come home, and there would be some kind of meal. We ate a lot of, because I learned to cook from Daddy, who when his mother died when he was in the 3rd grade, and he had 4 brothers and sisters younger than he, and his father drove the mail wagon, the mule-drawn mail wagon for the white postmaster. Okay, so that was, and he was away from home a great deal. So he depended on Robert, was my dad's name, to be at home and take care of the children. That's what it was like for a man born in 1914, a black man in Algiers. So he learned to cook, I'm assuming, from many of the women in the neighborhood who probably kept a little eye out on his father's name was Jethro, on Jethro's children to see how they were doing. And so then I kind of learned that, and he just did a kind of a narrow but rich repertory of what I consider to be probably Southern Louisiana cooking. I'm not a historian in the sense that I could say, this is Creole, and this is Cajun, or that kind of thing. But it was red beans and rice, smothered beans, collard greens, fricasseed chicken, fricasseed pork chops, gravy, rice all the time, rice, and cornbread.
Rice is not a bad thing.
Yeah, no, I adore rice. Would eat rice probably every day if I had to. Not if I had to, but I just would. It wouldn't bother me. And of course, cornbread, which we cooked 2 and 3 times a week. I love cornbread cold. I like it hot. Cornbread.
Right,
You just have cornbread. And I still cook cornbread in the same cast iron skillet that he gave me when I was 9.
Oh, wow.
Okay? Because it's just the right size and it makes it right. Okay.
Oh, wait,
So,
before you go on with the cornbread, let me ask you a question. Do you like your cornbread sweet? Cakey?
Okay. This is where the food historian goes.
Oh, boy.
And being a little opinionated. I think we cooked the cornbread that we grew up with, that we loved. Robert Jethro Christopher, born in 1914, he used yellow cornmeal, and he always put about 2 tablespoons of brown sugar in his cornbread. I do that. That's what I do. I don't care about anybody else's desires. They can do whatever the hell they want.
When they make their cornbread, yes.
Okay. Now, on the counterpoint to that, because I don't want to argue about food.
No.
Food is not an argument thing, It's that just some people do and some people don't, and it's whatever. Because it's a 1 cup flour to 1 cup cornmeal, and sometimes I'll fudge a little bit and add a little bit more cornmeal, depends on the texture of the cornmeal,
right.
Okay, is with baking powder, buttermilk or milk, hot oil or lard, and eggs. Okay, but it still is a moist, rather dense cornbread. I don't think it could be considered a cake. I have eaten corn cake. That's more kind of toward the jiffy end.
Yes.
And not to be critical, because I want somebody to eat cornbread, no matter what kind of cornbread they eat, to actually tell you the truth. Toward the cakey end, which is really more flour than cornmeal. Or the cornmeal tends to be, I think, in those brands, very, very finely ground. Okay, I want the corn texture. I want it to have chew. I want, and I have pictures. I can give you a picture of a cornbread, one of my cornbreads.
Right.
Okay, in a skillet, and you can see what I'm looking for. So we ate a lot of cornbread, and we did that a lot. Now, having been raised in a very radical home, there were also occasions in which my mother was a communist in the 30s and kind of a socialist kind of after that. All of the ways in which that all shifted between, it was all like 70 years ago, 80 years ago. So I grew up around a lot of expats, Easterners. I grew up in Southern California, in the country essentially, or small town Southern California, back when Los Angeles was really a small town. And San Diego were small towns.
They were small towns. Well,
they were little. They were little enclaves of towns, kind of strung along highways, and nothing so, really mega as kind of LA kind of became.
Right. Everybody wants to go to LA.
That meant that I grew up around lots and lots of Mexican kids, and Mexican kids who came from families that were 5th generation California born and just arrived yesterday afternoon.
Yeah,
Okay,
right.
a real range. And often, of course, within their households, cooked still whatever their traditional foods were. A lot of Chinese, especially Chinese small farmers that provided truck gardens and stuff. I didn't know and didn't really meet any Japanese kids or really any adults until, I was already like a teenager after the camps closed.
Okay.
Because, they were all incarcerated during the war, and I was born in 1942. So that, I didn't go to a Japanese restaurant or have that sense until much later.
Okay.
But I did eat a lot of Chinese food and had a sense of that. And then a lot of Jewish food, because a lot of people that we knew had relatives that had come over after they got out of the camps, and elders who joined their families, or just families that moved from New York or whatever and came out to California, especially in the film industry and music industry. And so I had a lot of that kind of food too. And I loved all of that kind of food. And my thing has kind of always been, ever since I was a kid, oh, okay, this tastes like that, and that tastes like that, and so it must have that in it. And then I always figured, well, if they can make it, I can figure out how to make it, And it may not be exactly that, but it's kind of my, what resources I have that I could do it. So I love a lot of noodle dishes. I love, I like beet borscht. I like, all of that full range of deli foods. What I think of often, though, as really home style, ate in a lot of homes. That was what they were eating at home.
And now they become
deli
food, right.
and they became deli. If you didn't have home, you could go to the deli and could get it very much like that. And I always loved that food. I loved the variety of Mexican food because I lived for such a long time just above the border, and that is one thing that we did a lot, was to go to Baja California, which is just across the border from San Diego, and we would eat, and we'd go to Ensenada, and we'd have fresh made ceviche, and we'd have whatever it is my parents bought. I just ate. Now I never learned to tolerate really hot chilioso food. I love the savor. I love the flavor, but the hot is. So I'm kind of. You probably think me was something.
No.
But I do a lot of cooking of very hot foods because I know people love it, and I'll cook anything for somebody, even if it's not something that I usually enjoy. But I love those beans. I love tortillas. I love salsas. I love pork cooked. I love
the carnitas.
I love that, but I also love pozole, and I love. Now, I don't care for the gristly parts of the menudo, which is fine. You just put them over there. I love the sopa. I wouldn't eat that. I love Fanta.
Yeah.
And Great Knee High, which were the only soda pops that I was allowed to have when I was a kid. And so I grew up eating that and rarely really going to restaurants except really, really cheap Chinese restaurants, but who were cooking very California Cantonese style, which was beautifully stir-fried vegetables and that kind of clear, glossy kind of sauce and a lot of rice. And I loved all that. And I loved the food that Daddy cooked. Right. And so that's what I cooked for years and years and years and years. And that's what I cooked. That's the kind of the foundation of the cookery that I do. And whenever I've had the option to learn, and I think you'll understand, I'm not that what I kind of have often called peasant food. People who are growing some of their own, perhaps, or living very much, even in an urban setting, trying to use the traditional foods that they brought with them from wherever the hell they came from, and that they cook every day. Right. They cook it every day because their family eats it. I love that kind of food, and I'll add that to my repertory.
Okay.
So that when I got to be a farmer and could grow all of the food I wanted, and could have all the butter and the cream and the beef and the pork. I'm a food hoarder. I have 5 freezers. They're full. I confess it. Hello, I'm Leni, and I'm a food hoarder.
Okay, Leni, I need you to talk to my mom because she's one too, but I don't think she'll own up to it.
I'm trying to I have over the last like 15 years really tried to discipline myself to make inventory lists, to go out, get somebody else who can help keep me honest, empty the damn freezer. I just put blankets on the floor, we empty the freezer, we sort it, all the stuff that needs to go to the chickens, out, and then I'll make lists. And I'll try to, and I must say, technology has begun to help too. If I could afford, I'd have only upright freezers. Chest freezers, you lose everything in the bottom of the freezer. Once it's disappeared, boy, that is gone.
That's the end of that.
I
think I had a leg of lamb, and then it's like
what?
2 years later, it's like, oh, I did have a leg of lamb.
The vacuum sealer units for the home have been a fabulous addition to preserving food and not wasting food, because that's what it really gets down to is, you can hoard the food, but if you're not eating it, if you're wasting it, if it gets freezer burned, you have to throw it out, then, you're living something that's really not a truth, and you got to kind of get honest with yourself and get yourself together. And those are all part of, to me, what over the last certainly 20 years I might call, or have come to call, my thoughts about home provisioning. How do you do the food every day? Every day. It doesn't matter if it's just you, but especially when you have a family of people who are going to school and their children, and they're growing, and they're all. How do you feed everybody every day? How do you help them be part of that, so that the total burden just doesn't fall on just one of the spouses or just one of the people? How do you do that? And how do you do it so that it's enjoyable and rich, and whether it's plain, like I said, I could eat red beans and rice and cornbread every day, but it's going to be really nice rice, maybe a little pilaf, I like that too, with some onions and some stock, okay? It's going to be really well seasoned beans. One of my children asked me, he said, God, I never can get the beans seasoned the way you do. The pot of red beans, and I usually use pinto beans. If I can get hold of red beans, I like to use those too. He says, I put in, chili powder, just common ground, nothing fancy, and I put in a couple of tablespoons. I said, hell, I put in like a quarter of a cup, a third of a cup. You know what I mean? I'm going to put in a quarter of a cup of garlic, not salt. I don't use any salt, but just granulated.
Right.
That's really, it takes a lot of savor. I'm going to really put hot ground pepper in there. I'm going to really salt it. I want it to really taste.
You want to
because
that.
I want it to be totally satisfying in that bowl right now, as if that was going to be the last beans and rice you were ever going to eat.
I don't even think about it.
You see what I mean? And that, of course, it's kind of subconscious on my part, but that. If you kind of aim for that, people get a little tentative about it, and then they're not they don't find the food quite as satisfying. A lot of times it's just too bland.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Now we all then have to then do our science and read our science on what the difference between salt and dietary salt and high blood pressure. We need to really understand those things and talk to our doctors and whatever. Because for some people, obviously, there are some issues with salt, and they need to be concerned about that. But for most people, just season the damn food and eat it, would you please? And be quiet. Fats, I use lard, I use butter, I use chicken fat, I use duck fat, I use suet. Okay? I use saturated fats because they are rich. They come from animals that I've acquired or meat. Because more and more the evidence shows, you can go out and read the research, dietary fats are not anywhere near as implicated with coronary heart disease and cholesterol as was assumed. 100 years ago, 70 years ago, it was thought, well, okay, you got clogged arteries, well then just eat less fat. Well, it turns out that fat and that fat are really very different. Our bodies absorb them very differently. And we need to begin to do the research so that we're not frightening people, especially for people of color who are concerned and still want traditional tastes. And I think we have to help people understand they don't have to stop eating, especially given at any time prior to 1860, when the majority of Black Americans were working at tremendously hard labor
Right.
every single day, under duress, and used anywhere from 3,000 to 4,000 calories a day, and needed to acquire as much fats and carbohydrates and as they could possibly acquire to do that, and why it is that pork has become such a centerpiece of our of the cuisine of the
Right,
South,
okay.
because it's just white people as well, poor white people who worked hard. Yes, and they did it quite successfully. Otherwise, none of us would be here, folks. Okay, people were eating and doing and reproducing, and a lot of the problems they had were not really related to the nature of the food they were eating. It was much more related to how much of it they got to get, and other stressors that were totally removed. They were the part of the political and social and economic stressors of our American history that we could talk about. But food, we have to kind of remove the onus on the food, as if if we just solved the food thing, people wouldn't have high blood pressure.
Right.
Well, no. We live in a society in which stress for many kinds of things, in addition to being people of color,
Right.
are contributors, definite contributors to how we respond to stress. And we have to kind of remove it from food being the magic elixir, the magic button. Well, if you just stopped eating salt, you'd be okay. No, if you ate pretty good food because you like it, and then you had a decent job and you had health care, yeah, you'd be, you know what I mean? That blood pressure would drop 10 points by tomorrow afternoon. Because that's as stressy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it is.
If you have to worry about, because your kid who's currently incarcerated can't call you except on a collect call, and you ain't got no money for the collect call, and you want to you say that's a stressor.
Yeah.
Of course you're uptight, and then everybody in the house is uptight because they all want to talk to Bubba. They know. We could get exaggerated and go on and on,
Yes,
but
sir.
it is that food is not a magic bullet. It's just food, you know, and it's good. It's all the things, but it ain't magic, folks. And we need, I keep saying this, and you hear me, and I say we're all gonna die sooner or later.
Yeah.
In fact, relatively sooner than we'd like.
But we die a little bit every day.
Right. He not busy being born is busy dying. Okay. Bob Dylan said that almost 55 years ago.
Wow.
Okay. And the thing is, we want to have our progress through this journey, however it might be, as comfortable, as graceful, as generous, as smooth. What I'm aiming for. The rest of it is all woo-woo fluff. You know?
Well, so you're talking about farming, and such one of the questions that I wanted to ask you. You farm, you grow. I enjoy being here at High High Park, especially when I get to come here and cook, and Keisha's able to pull out, well, I killed this chicken yesterday for you, or
here's a new chicken.
Yeah,
Right.
Or here's some herbs out of the garden, or I got these zucchinis. Just can't. It's like I'm excited.
Yeah.
So right now, for the last couple of years, the trend has been the farm to table. Now, my feelings on that is like, I don't know if we should call it a trend, because isn't that how we should live? Like, shouldn't we want to be eating?
It is that anyway. We're just kind of naming it this thing. Where do you think restaurants have been getting their food anyway?
Right.
It had a shortcut through, Cisco or one of those companies that could provide it in large volume, already weighed, ready to go. You know what I'm saying? And again, we have to stop demonizing the middle person as well.
Well, some middle people.
No. There are middle people who are assholes, of course. Can I say that on your program?
It's too late now. We've already said it. Go ahead.
Okay. We have to stop throwing the baby out with the bathwater. It doesn't matter what tradition you're in or what you're doing. There's always going to be jerks. There's always going to be graspers. There's always going to be con men. Fine. We know that. We can keep aware of that, and they're going to put them over there, and they're going to deal with the people because there's 360 million people in this country, and the majority of them live in cities. In fact, by 2050, 70% of all the people on the planet are going to live in cities across the global world. Even today now, you have Beijing has 21 million people in it. Nairobi has 8 million people in it. I didn't put the list in front of me, and I have it in the other room, and I can go get it. 8 major cities, of which none of them have less than 5 million people in them.
Wow.
Okay, so
That's a lot of people.
that's a lot of people to feed, and they all have to be fed. Okay, so what we have to be thinking more about, to my way of thinking, is how to. Not all of them are going to be gardeners. In fact, very few of them are going to be gardeners because they live in 16-floor apartments. Okay, they can have a pot of herbs. What?
Well, maybe some.
And they might
tomatoes.
go down. They might have a pot of tomatoes if they have a balcony. They might be part of a little community garden where they grow, 6 tomatoes and an arugula. Those are kind of, and I'm not using the word hobby in any negative way. They are ways of helping us remember where the food comes, get our little hand in. It's like people who knit socks. Now, I'm sorry. Knitting socks is beautiful, and I admire people who knit socks. I don't have the patience to knit 2 socks. I can knit 1, but I can't knit 2.
That's hilarious.
Okay, so, but obviously, there are not enough knitters on the planet to keep us all in socks.
Fine.
So, we are producing socks by the billions worth in machines in factories. And what is the material used is cotton. And where it is picked and who and how it is harvested, it's usually not hand-picked anymore, how it is harvested and how it is processed and the workers who do all that work. What I want, yes, I want inexpensive socks, I understand it. But I also want them to all get a fair and generous wage, or not necessarily generous, but fair wage. I want them to have health insurance, so that, universal health care. I want their children to be able to go to school so that I don't have to wear socks made by somebody who's 12. Okay, that's what I want. Now, the same I have with food or with any of those things. But in general, in this country, we're not usually talking about child labor except in some narrow circumstances that we do need to pay a close attention to, and that has to do with migrant labor, and that's a serious and a subject worthy of much more debate than, not debate even, of attention. But in general, it's the guy out there in Montana that grows 7,000 acres of wheat and harvests it and then sends it to the big
factory.
The big
mill.
storage house there.
Okay.
And then they sell it, and they do. That then sells to the miller who mills it, and then we have bread, because all of these people need bread, and they can't all bake bread for many kinds of reasons. Some of them because they're only 2 years old, others because they're 87 years old, others because they work long and hard, others because they don't want to bake bread.
Okay, everybody can't do everything.
Not only can everybody can't do everything, everybody doesn't have to do everything, and they don't need to have to want to do everything. And it's that kind of, there's a certain kind of really, elitist thing that often goes on with this food trip, and somehow we're all supposed to, no, who would go to, if everybody did all that stuff, why would they go to a restaurant? You know what I'm saying? Why do people go to restaurants? Because they don't make Osco Busco or whatever. They're doing real good if they can manage to put, a thing of mac and cheese in the microwave at the end of a long day. Now, if it's really good quality mac and cheese, good on you, bud. Eat a sweet pepper on the side of that, and you got a little food in your mouth, and it's hot and it's good. If it's good mac and cheese, I don't care how it's made. I'm just not.
So do you feel like that whole farm to table thing seems to be a little bit snooty?
It gets both, gets not only snooty, it gets real twee and self-reverential.
But
and
you do,
pretty obnoxious.
but you do dinners at
But I don't call them farm to table. I just call them, they're historic. I use historic menus.
Mm-hmm.
I try to source what I'm using locally, because I like to keep small businesses in business.
Right.
That's my rationale for it. If I can afford it, if it fits within my budget, and then I go out to the next level and the next level. And now, if there's a farm to table event, which has as a particular structure that everything that you're eating on this table, except like the spices and whatever, the wine, was basically produced here, or here and the surrounding 3 farms. That can be a really fun and special thing. You're eating outdoors, you're enjoying. I'm not trying to take the joy out of any of it, but we do have to be at $78 a sitting or $150 a sitting. We're not talking to Bubba here, baby. We're talking to somebody that can afford that, and that's wonderful that they can afford it, and it goes into the farmers' pockets, which they need because they pay taxes and they got animals and they got vet bills, and I don't deride that. But we have to be very careful not to make these very fine distinctions. Are you organic? No, I'm not organic, darling. I just don't use a lot of poisons that I think are really crappy, and I just grow stuff, and and besides which, who knows what organic is? Nobody's really decided on it, and I'm tired of people capitalizing on it and making it some benchmark for how valid you are as a grower or a farmer.
But that's funny because you say that, and then I would say last year I learned that like items that you buy in the supermarket, let's say spaghetti sauce, a jar of spaghetti sauce, can be considered organic if it only has one item in there that is actually organic.
Which is why, okay, and now I know we're not supposed to, we'll just use the word BS. We have to have a very alert BS meter, because a lot of that is basically BS. If you buy an item and you're paying 3 extra pennies for it because it has a little tag on it that says non-GMO, and it's for an item that there aren't any GMO varieties or versions of that. So you need to go out online and Google what vegetables and crops are right this minute. It's the 18th.
Yeah.
Okay. We could do that. We could go Google that. I could have my that are for sale, that have been genetically modified. Now, I happen to be really very pro-GMO. That's my position, and I'd argue with a lot of people, because I'm going to ask them how much science have you actually read. But okay, as opposed to kind of mythic, blah blah blah. But if you're telling me that so-and-so is non-GMO and there aren't any GMO whatever it is, then you're paying a con man 3 extra cents for putting that tag on there, and that's, you got it, your BS meter should be going clang, 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 okay, at that point. With any of that, you need to ask and be serious about doing the research, and not just, always drill down. When somebody says to you, this berry is really, the miracle berry, whichever berry of the week that it is, okay, is really good for you. Then you find out, if you drill down one thing, that they sell that berry. Clang, clang, clang. That's where that one goes. Okay. The other thing is to ask, so it's a miracle berry. Where does it come from? Who grows it?
The Miracle Place.
Well, see, is that Miracle Place Peru, in a small canton where there's 800 of these trees? I mean, who are you buying it from? Do all of those people who live there, have they been eating these berries for, I don't know, 1,000 years, and they still have no teeth, and maternal, infant and mother maternal rates that are very high, and they get typhus and cholera and yaws and all that stuff like everybody else gets. It's poor and doesn't have proper sanitation and doesn't have water. And are they selling those berries because that's a way they can make a little cash to the middleman in Lima or wherever the hell he is? and now you sit in the West eating these berries. Well, now what happens is they can't afford to eat these berries. In the same way with quinoa and all the miracle ones.
Right.
You want to ask, where are they from? Who grows them? What role has that food played in their diet? Is it, I'm tired of the 1,000-year-old Tibetan. Anybody really seen a few documentaries on Tibet recently?
Oh,
I mean, I recommend that you do that. I'm not going to go into a big harangue about it. I'm just saying, go out and watch 5 documentaries, real, by, the National Geographic and PBS,
right.
On Tibet. And then, and look at all the people that are there, that are in the frame, that are coming in and out. First of all, there's mostly just regular folks, but they are not miracle folks. They are not miracle folks. They are just folks. And yak butter ain't gonna do it. Do you know what I mean? It's not the miracle whatever.
Not
the next miracle, the whatever.
I shouldn't go
mean,
get
it
me
just,
a yak.
no, you're not gonna suddenly come out, with no wrinkles and you're just beautiful and you're gonna live. Because all of that has to do with fear of food and using wellness, actually using wellness as a bludgeon, and using wellness, the notion of wellness, as a weapon against death. As I say again, we're all going to die. We would like to die,
right.
Feeling hopefully pretty good, but we're going to die. We're going to die of something. So, sooner or later, we'd like to live. We'd like it to be not painful. We'd like to be surrounded by our loved ones, but using food and fear of food as a buffer and a superior, well, I eat this and all is just, it's very off-putting. It's often, well, to me, the problem with it is it's often a lie, and then it becomes kind of a fad of, young people. You can all remember being young. I remember being young because it was a long time ago. Yeah. Right. But being, passionate. I've marched in peace marches and I've done all the stuff and I've sung, free concerts for this and that and all the stuff that everybody does when you're at a certain age. I don't have any time for that anymore. But I support people who do it. But the fact is, though, that the deeply passionate young often are not householders. They don't cook every day. They can afford to not eat. They can afford to eat often one thing. They can afford to go be interns for 6 months with no pay at various people's farms, whom I shall not mention in this interview. And then their situation as they mature into the householder stage, life becomes different.
Yes.
You can't just jump on a bus and run to Washington and protest.
Okay.
And you got children. You got that little baby, and it's got to go to daycare. No. And your spouse has a job. And
so he's gonna want me there too? Is it all of that?
Do you see what I mean? Yeah.
I gotta be a grown-up.
You can't
now.
do all of it. Now you got to be a householder. And if I have a message, I hate to think of it as being so pretentious as a message, but if I have an outlook, it is that householders comprise the broadest range of people, and by that I mean people who choose to live with partners so that there's two people dependent on each other for whatever they do, and then they usually acquire children of some sort, adopted, mixed,
Can we consider the dogs and the cats?
No.
Okay.
I know. I didn't say that.
It's okay.
Yeah, no.
A lot
Dogs
of
and cats are not children.
A lot
they
of people
are
think
pets.
that.
Yes, I understand they do. We must be very patient with them because they need more alcohol in their lives, I believe. Or dope would be really good too, but they need to ratchet it down on the dogs and cats. Companion animals are wonderful. I'm actually being kind of over the top. They have acquired. Well, on one level, of course, they have taken responsibility for a being that cannot survive without them. And in that case, yes, it is much like children. Children are going to grow up, however, and leave your house and hopefully visit every once in a while and bring you a bottle of wine. And your dog ain't never going to do that. So there you go. Now, households then range and they shift through time. And then you reach the households where you've got adults in their 40s, some teens. You might have a senior who joined your household, or a senior for whom you want to keep an eye on who lives by themselves. Those are households. Those are very different demands and rich, challenging demands, for that. So householding is a long thing.
Yeah.
Some of us decide not to be householders, and we, using the language of Buddhism and some other forms of faith, we kind of become renunciants, and some of us go and be nuns, Buddhist nuns, Catholic nuns, and what have we given up when we do that? We've given up that life for a life of contemplation or prayer and consideration of others and care, where we're not engaging in that, we're tending it in some way.
Right.
Okay? All that's fine, but you do have to understand which one you're doing, because you can't do them all.
Right.
You just can't do them all, and you can't do them all at the same time, and you could do them in order. You could reach a place, you get your householding thing together, your kids leave your house, bap, now you're going to go
And be a nun.
be a nun, join the Peace Corps,
Be a monk.
be a monk, whatever. All of those we have whole wonderful, beautiful writings and collections of writings over the last 1,000 years, or more even, of groups of people who have established ways to approach that. So it's not foreign, it's not any of those things.
Right.
And much of it is deeply inspiring, because sometimes we think, God, as soon as I get all these kids out of the house, by God, I'm going to go whatever it is.
Yeah, I'm going to live my best life.
I'm just going to choose this other, I'm going to choose another. But the point is that make sure that every stage of life we are in is the best we can do it, because we're not running from one to the other to the other. And I do have to say, I am not a Christian. I am not a believer, so I do not believe in an afterlife. So while I have observed many people, beautiful people, for whom this life is a stage and a preparatory stage for an afterlife, and this comes from all manners of faith beings of all kinds of cultures. I don't personally share that. So my notion is, this is the one you got. Do it the best you can.
Yeah.
Do it in the order that seems orderly to you, such that when you're gone, the people who are left say, she was pretty nice. Yeah, I really liked her. I remember when I met her, blah, blah, blah. Or, I have this thing that she gave me and it was really nice. Or she made great whatever. She did great work in this or that.
Right.
And the more great, the more you do it, and sometimes the more public you do it, the more, at the most heightened levels of expertise at doing it, the longer the memory lasts. Why are we still talking about the Jesus, the Buddha, others whom we, Martin Luther King, others that we hold as exemplars generations after they are gone?
Right.
Because they appear to us to reflect a kind of goodness and purpose that we would like to enclose into our lives.
Right.
All of this gets very fluffy and very twee, and philosophical in terms of our conversation.
Right.
Because actually, it really comes down to, what are you going to do on Monday? I mean, what are you going to do on Monday? Which means your family, your house. What are you going to do? And if you have a house that is disorderly and nobody is fed well and it's all scattered and you're all crazy and everybody's depending on outside stimulation and drugs in order just to get the hell by, you need to concentrate on that and get that together, because if that is the case and you're still out there protesting and signing and petitions and marching and being angry at the administration, you're not doing anything. You actually are stalled. That's right. Your kids are hungry. Their homework isn't finished. But whatever it is, be where you are. actually be where you are, recognize where you are, and for the certain period of time, stay the hell where you are. Stay where you are till you got it good enough that you can then take a next view out to where you might now want to go. You can't, it's very frustrating to me, and you can't do it all fast. So that's why I think I like Daddy's food, or a lot of Mexican food. It's simple. You can eat it every day. If you learn how to cook a fabulous pot of beans, a fabulous pot of rice, and a cornbread, and some green beans, and a sweet potato pie would be really nice if you wanted to step out a little bit.
Be fancy.
You could eat dignity, as my dad would have said. You could eat that every day. There are people who used to eat kind of the same range of things every day.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the difference was that everybody ate kind of the same things every day because that's what they had: cornmeal, vegetables, blah blah blah. Miss Ma'am, who lived next door, could cook. The old poem when Melinda sings. You know what I mean? Everybody sang when they were her food, same damn food, but beautiful, just beautiful. Laid down the street, couldn't cook worth a lick. Got the same beans, got the same, and there's always somebody in the community who can't cook,
right?
And you don't. And whenever there's a potluck, you say, "Sweetie pie, would you bring the napkins?"
Not even the sodas.
Well, now the sodas,
Right,
but back in the day, how about you bring the napkins and the tablecloth? Because you really don't want to eat them. Everybody knows.